I want you to do something for me before I start. Look at your laptop. It doesn't matter where it is right now. On your desk. On the couch next to you. Closed on the floor by your bed. Just look at it for a second. You trust that thing, don't you? You've had it for years. You know every scratch on the case. Every slow moment when it takes too long to load. It's been with you through everything. Now imagine opening it one afternoon and finding a folder you never created, full of photos of yourself sleeping. Not a few. Not something you could brush off as a glitch. Hundreds of photos. 6 months of them. Every single night. That's what happened to me. And by the time this story is over, I think you'll want to check your own camera. I was 26 at the time, living alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that looked like every other building on the street. Nothing special about it. Thin walls, neighbors I barely knew, a window that looked out onto a parking lot. I worked from home doing freelance graphic design, which meant my laptop was everything to me. My office, my entertainment, my connection to the outside world. I used it from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to sleep. It had a built-in camera above the screen. That small, dark circle that sits right above the display on almost every laptop. And like most laptops, it had a tiny indicator light next to it. A little green dot that was supposed to turn on whenever the camera was active. I never saw that light turn on. Not once. Not in 8 months. I need you to hold on to that detail, because it matters more than anything else I'm about to tell you. The months before I found the folder were completely ordinary. That's what I keep coming back to even now. There were no strange feelings, no sense of being watched, no sounds at night that I couldn't explain, nothing that would have made a reasonable person think something was wrong. My routine was simple. Wake up, coffee, work, wind down, sleep, repeat. I had a few friends who visited occasionally. My ex had stopped by twice. We'd broken up about a year before, but stayed on decent terms. A coworker I'd gotten close to had come over once. My younger sister had stayed for a weekend. That was it. Just me and my apartment and my laptop every night. For months. It was a Tuesday in October when everything changed. I remember it clearly because I just finished a project that had been hanging over me for weeks, and for the first time in a while I felt relaxed. Light. I was in a good mood. I decided to clean up my desktop, organize files, delete old downloads, move things where they belonged. The kind of thing you put off when you're busy and finally get to when you have a moment to breathe. I was going through my documents folder when I noticed it. A folder with no name. Not named Untitled or New Folder, just nothing. A blank space where the name should have been. It looked almost invisible, like something trying not to be seen. I almost deleted it without opening it. I assumed it was an empty system folder, some leftover file from a software installation. My mouse hovered over it for a second. Then I double-clicked it. Inside were hundreds of image files, organized into smaller folders sorted by date. The dates went back 6 months, all the way to April. It was now October. I sat very still for a moment, just staring at the screen. My brain was doing what brains do when they encounter something they don't want to accept, looking for the easy explanation, the simple answer, the version of events that doesn't require fear. I clicked on the earliest folder. April 3rd, 12 images inside. I opened the first one. It was me. I was lying in my bed, asleep, photographed from the direction of my desk. The room was dark except for a faint pale glow coming through the curtains. I was facing away from the camera, curled slightly on my side, completely still. I opened the second photo. Same night. I had rolled over. Now I was facing the camera. Eyes closed, mouth slightly open. The timestamp in the lower corner of the image read 2:47 a.m. The coffee I'd been drinking went cold in my hand. I opened a third photo, 3:12 a.m., still me, still sleeping, completely unaware. I closed the folder. I sat back and I breathed. Slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth, trying to stay calm enough to think clearly. The photos were taken with my laptop camera. The angle was exactly right. The position exactly where my desk sat in relation to my bed. Someone had installed something on my machine that was capturing images of me throughout the night, without triggering the indicator light, without making a single sound, without leaving any trace I had noticed in 6 months. There were 2 possibilities, and neither of them was good. Either someone had been physically entering my apartment and photographing me while I slept, or someone had been inside my laptop, watching me remotely, every single night for half a year. I didn't know which one frightened me more. I opened the most recent folder, October 9th. 2 days ago, 15 photos. I went through them slowly, different times throughout the night, 1:03 a.m., 1:47 a.m., 2:58 a.m., all the way to 5:15 in the morning when the light through the curtains was just beginning to turn gray. 15 moments from a single night that I had slept through completely undisturbed, completely unaware of the eye watching me. And then I noticed something in a photo from just after 3 a.m. In the background, through my open bedroom doorway, out in the hallway, a shape. I leaned closer to the screen. I zoomed in with shaking fingers. It was a person standing in my hallway, still, silent, just standing there in the dark, facing the bedroom, watching. My hands started trembling so badly the laptop nearly slipped off my knees. I forced myself to look again, to make sure I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. I was. There was someone standing in the hallway of my apartment at 3 in the morning 2 days ago, watching me sleep. I slammed the laptop shut. I stood up so fast the chair rolled back and hit the wall behind me. I spun around and looked at every corner of the room, the closet door, the hallway, the bathroom, every shadow. The apartment was silent. I pressed my back against the far wall and stood there with my phone in my hand, eyes fixed on the hallway, listening. My heart was hitting so hard I could feel it in my throat. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. The apartment was empty. I checked every room anyway, opened every closet, looked under the bed, pulled back the shower curtain, checked behind the front door. I was alone. I locked the deadbolt, put a chair under the handle, checked every window. Then I sat back down on the couch and opened the laptop again because, as terrified as I was, I needed to understand what I was looking at. I went through all of the folders, every date, every photo, looking for more images of the figure. I found 3 more. Different nights, all between 2 and 4 in the morning, all showing the same dark shape in the same position at the end of my hallway. And then I noticed something that made my chest tighten in a way I can't fully describe. In the earliest photo, back in July, the figure was standing at the far end of the hallway, barely visible, almost swallowed by the darkness. In the photo from September, it was closer to the doorway. In the photo from 2 nights ago, it was standing right at the threshold, right at the edge of my bedroom door. It had been getting closer, night by night, week by week, over the course of months. It had been moving closer to where I slept. I know what I should have done. I know it clearly now, even though I didn't do it. I should have called the police immediately without doing anything else first. I had evidence, photos, timestamps, images of an intruder in my home. That was enough. But fear doesn't always make you rational. And there was something else underneath the fear. A need to understand. A desperate need to know who had done this before I involved anyone else. I had a short list of people who had ever touched my laptop, my ex who had borrowed it briefly about 8 months ago, right around when the oldest photos were dated, my coworker who had used it for a few minutes one afternoon, my sister who had stayed with me for a weekend. I kept coming back to my ex. We'd been together for 3 years. I'd loved him. He was thoughtful and funny, and I genuinely thought we'd last. But in the months after the breakup, he'd been strange, texting more than felt normal, asking about my routine in ways that seemed casual but that I now turned over in my memory with a different eye. I texted him, kept it simple, told him I'd found something odd on my laptop and wondered if he remembered doing anything with it when he'd borrowed it. He replied fast, said no, he'd only used the browser. I pushed slightly, said I'd found files I didn't put there. He went quiet, then my phone rang. It was him. He sounded normal, calm, concerned even. Asked what kind of files. I described them vaguely. He suggested it might be a virus, offered to come over and take a look. He offered too quickly, too smoothly, like the offer had been ready before I'd even finished the sentence. I told him I'd figured it out and hung up. Then I called the police. The officer who came that night listened carefully and took everything seriously. He looked through the folder, called in a detective who worked cybercrime cases, and within an hour there were 2 people sitting in my apartment going through my laptop with more knowledge than I had. The detective was calm and precise. She told me the photos were taken with my built-in webcam. She confirmed that the software responsible had been installed directly onto my machine, not accessed through the internet, but physically installed by someone who had the laptop in their hands. Someone who knew what they were doing and knew exactly how to hide it. She went quiet for a moment when I mentioned my ex had a background in computer science. Then she told me something that changed the shape of the whole story. The photos of the figure in the hallway were not taken by the webcam. They had been placed in the folder manually, added among the webcam photos deliberately by someone who wanted them to be found. They were taken with a phone camera, based on the resolution and the image data embedded in the files. And here was the part that I still think about on quiet nights. Those photos were not taken from the hallway. They were taken from inside the bedroom, from the foot of the bed, which meant that on those nights, there were two people in my apartment, one standing in the hallway, one standing at the foot of my bed, pointing a phone camera toward the doorway, photographing the first one. The detective had a theory that it was a kind of message, a way of showing me what they were capable of, a demonstration of how close they had been, how long they had been watching, how completely I had never known. They wanted me to find the folder. They left it sitting in plain sight, waiting for the day I would finally open it. They wanted me to see the photos and understand that for 6 months, while I slept peacefully and trustingly in my own home, I had not been alone. I didn't sleep in that apartment again. I called my sister that night and stayed with her while the investigation moved forward. I won't say everything that came out of it, because some of it is still complicated. But I'll tell you what I can. My ex was brought in for questioning. His phone had photos on it. Some of them were taken in my apartment. The software on my laptop had been installed during the window when he had borrowed it. 8 months of silent, invisible access. 8 months of watching. But the question that stayed with me, the one the detective's theory didn't fully answer, was about the figure in the hallway. Because on those nights, if my ex was at the foot of my bed with a phone in his hand, who was standing in the doorway? That question was never fully resolved. The investigation reached its conclusions, and the legal process moved forward, and life eventually continued in the way that life does. But the figure in the hallway was never identified, and in the photos it doesn't look like anyone I know. I have a new laptop now, a new apartment, better locks, different habits. I don't fall asleep with the laptop open anymore. I don't leave it on the desk facing my bed, and every night, before I turn off the light, I put a small piece of tape over the camera. I know how that sounds. I know some people would say it's excessive, that I'm letting fear win, that the odds of this happening to someone are small. But I've learned something that I didn't know before all of this. Something the detective said to me on the last night I spoke to her, when I asked how I could have caught this earlier, what signs I might have seen. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Most people who have this done to them never find out. I found the folder by accident. I was cleaning up files I almost deleted without opening. A blank name folder I nearly skipped past. Most people never clean that deeply. Most people never look. So before you close this and go to sleep tonight, check your camera light, make sure it's off. And if it is, good, but just to be safe, maybe put some tape over it anyway." This has been The Dark Whisper. Sleep well.